United, a huge game in the race for Champions League qualification.
Hmm.
Nick, I'm going to come to you first. This is basically must-win territory for Chelsea now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, look, it's crazy how quickly it's happened, and maybe it's been a quiet sort of losing streak, considering how or winless streak, considering how we usually view Chelsea, right? But this is, yeah, it's massive. And it's funny, I almost rebel against, I think this is a club-wide big week, because I rebel against the idea that Rosinha is responsible for, a large lion's share of this. He has responsibility, don't get me wrong, but this whole season has been wild and weird. And for Chelsea as a club, this game just feels top to bottom big.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, there's a bit of a mess, right? Like, as Nick mentioned there, Rosinha came in. A lot of the players kind of liked Maresca still and were a bit confused about why the change happened.
Yeah.
But the Fernandes situation with him being suspended, obviously he can come back in for this one. But just the attack, that was always the thing I could rely on with Chelsea, that, okay, they might be a mess at the back, give up a couple of goals, but they're always going to score 2 or 3 with Palmer, João Pedro, Neto, etc. But looking at their last 3 Premier League games, they haven't scored in those. So all of a sudden, the one thing they could rely on has gone. So that's really hurt them as well. And I don't know if that's Rosinha being a bit more pragmatic and the creativity, the passing, the movement's just gone. But yeah, for him, it's, he's only a few months into the job, but it's hard to see if they finish outside the top 5 and don't win the FA Cup, that there's not going to be huge pressure building on him over the summer if he does stick around.
Yeah, welcome to the Chelsea job. I mean, this is what it is. You get about 3 games into it, and if you've not got 6 points on the board already, it seems like we're asking questions. And it was a tough situation when he went in there, like you say, Joe. Sure. The players loved playing for Maresca. They seem to really like him as an individual as well. And as a Spurs fan, you look at what they did in the summer, letting Ange go, and how much the players loved him, and just how that seemed to change the morale around the club. I think something similar has happened there at Chelsea. And I know that Rosinha was kind of being, grown for this role to move up within the organization. And it's just, it didn't feel like the right time at the moment. I wasn't completely convinced they needed to make a change in the first place. And then to throw him in 2/3 of the way through the season was setting everybody up for failure. And I think we've seen a lot of that from Chelsea in recent years, the way that they've conducted transfer business and the way that they've built 2 squads, really. And they're imbalanced. It's a lot of really great attacking talent, like you say. And I think maybe what he has actually done is this more sensible thing, is try to find a little bit of balance, because he has to approach it as, well, I'm going to be the long-term guy. And so he's trying to build something, but we know on the outside, and he knows as well, but what he projects to the outside and what he tries to lead with is, we're going through a process. There is no process at Chelsea. And so you say must win. I say just must show up from Chelsea this weekend.
And we need Man United to show up, right, Nick? Because they need to show a reaction. They had that first kind of big stumble under Carrick, losing to Leeds last time out. But they have to prove that's a one-off, right? They're still looking pretty locked in for a top 5 spot in Champions League qualification, which would be incredible given the first half of the season. But I guess my main issue with them is the centre-back situation and availability for this game. That's where it's kind of been built on a very solid base for them under Carrick so far, and then hitting teams on the counter and not making big mistakes. But this is a big moment for him, I think, not just for this season, but if he is going to be the leading contender to get this job on a long-term basis.
This show, we try to avoid the cliche questions, but is this game not a who needs it more game? Like, is this not ripe for that sort of discussion? And,
Sure.
we used to talk about the immovable force against or whatever it is, unstoppable force versus immovable object. And you mentioned that without De Ligt, without Maguire, without Martinez, you're looking at the very movable object against a sluggish force. I would argue, that you could really look at Chelsea and say, man, Cole Palmer hasn't been right. Maybe he's not healthy. They still keep the ball almost as much as anybody besides City. There's been some bad luck. Colwill and Chalobah have been out. You could look at Man United. It's not the very opposite, because Bruno Fernandes has been magnificent. But they win games and they don't necessarily look great. It's been a bit of a Fergie magic ride, right? And so I just can't help but wonder, are they better? Of course they're better, than they were before. They're no longer building a system. They've brought in a coach and said, here are all the ingredients, make the best stew we can. Instead of 5-star Michelin Amarim, what he was trying to do. But I would argue that on the whole, Chelsea are still playing something that looks more like football to Man United.
That's fair enough. I think both teams are very good on the counter, though, so they're kind of stuck in that, we want to do this, but we're actually really good at counter-attacking and being really incisive on the break there. Look at the table, Andy. Obviously, United sitting third going into this game, 55 points going into the weekend. Chelsea on 48 points and 6, so they need to finish 5th, obviously, to get that Champions League spot. I mean, this is like knockout territory, right? If you're Man United, do you just sit in and then try and hit Chelsea like a perfect away display and be like, okay, that's one of the contenders gone if we can go to Stamford Bridge and win this weekend?
Yeah, it almost suits United to be away in this one. To your point there, Joe, is, if you flip it around and then the onus is on Manchester United to play and to control the game and to have some of that possession at home, and that doesn't really suit them at the moment. It's Bruno and the counter boys, and they really get forward and going to Stamford Bridge, we know Chelsea will have more of the possession. And we also know that in the middle third of the field, it's Moises Caicedo and really nothing at this point, without the ball, I should say. And so I don't want to oversimplify it too much, but this kind of comes down to Bruno versus Moises, doesn't it? And which one of those two, has a bigger impact on this one, I think probably is going to decide it. And because of United being away from home, I kind of lean towards them, because Bruno's going to have runners out wide. They're going to have space in behind Chelsea's defense, because the fullbacks are not good. The fullback situation at Chelsea is, and this is kind of a problem around a lot of teams in the league, the top teams especially, the fullbacks aren't good there defensively. And so there's going to be space in behind. And nobody's exploited it better than Bruno this season.
Yeah, I would go and see that band, by the way, Bruno and the Counter Boys. I like it. That's a good one. Nick, let's do predictions, because I'm struggling to see the light for Chelsea here. They are a very good team, but they're just in a bad moment, and they seem like the kind of team, once they get in that bad moment, that can really linger and stay for a while and fester a bit. I don't know. Is a draw likely in this one?
Yeah, probably. I think that I can't justify it when I say this. I do think Chelsea will win. I don't know that it'll look great. I do think everything you guys are saying is right, but it's almost like looking at Manchester United the last few weeks and the last few times I've watched them. Not that the scales have fallen from my eyes or anything like that, but they look more like an ordinary team with a couple veteran players driving. Like Casemiro, who wasn't great last game, but has been getting a lot done and finding big goals. They were better when Delot came in. Bruno is obvious. I still think, Premier League player of the season, had another assist. But when I look at them, I see a bunch of nearly guys. And I don't mean nearly like we used to talk about a Premier League team coming up from the Championship and, they just don't have any Premier League. This is more like we're talking about a Champions League team. And I think Man United will make the Champions League. But outside of Bruno, I don't know that I see that's the guy who's going to take over a Champions League game situation. And so João Pedro and Palmer, again, he's in an impossible rut. I just think there's probably enough there to get something out of this game. And I guess I'll go above draw, 2-1.
2-1 to Chelsea. All right, I'm going 2-1 to Man United, Andy. I think the counter-attacking situation, I assume Mbeumo is going to be fit to start this one, playing him up centrally. I could just see this is perfect for United grabbing it. And I think Kobbie Mainoo as well, his availability, obviously just controlling the game a little bit, and they just need to kind of keep hold of the ball as much as they can to calm things down. But just think United are in a slightly better moment confidence-wise, and we'll kind of want to show that reaction. And I think the players like Carrick as well, so we shouldn't underestimate that. I think they'd be quite happy for him to stick around next season. And by winning this game at Chelsea, that really increases the chances of that happening. So, yeah, I'm going for United. What are you going for?
Yeah, I'll go United as well. I'll say 3-2. And again, not to oversimplify things, but which goalkeeper do you trust or maybe not trust in a big game with kind of your entire season on the line for Chelsea? It's not Sanchez. Lamon's come in, been very, very solid this season and probably picked up a handful of points for United on his own this season. And that's a complete opposite of what they've got at Chelsea. So at some point, and we don't love to see, we don't pray for anybody's downfall here, but that Sanchez has done it a lot to Chelsea this season.
Let's see how Chelsea get on, and as they host Manchester United this weekend in a massive game in the Champions League race. Head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for